Hi folks, and welcome back to Meaningful Money. We're going to look today at why interest rates are so bad at the moment. If you're the kind of person who shops around for the best deal on your savings in a bank or a building society, and you should be that kind of person, then you will have noticed that in the last 4 to 6 months, the rates you can get on your savings have got a lot worse very quickly. But why is that? Well, I thought I'd have a look at that this time, but before I do, I must thank my friends down here in the bottom right. That's Seven Investment Management, and they continue to sponsor me here on Meaningful Money, for which I'm really grateful. Now, here are some sort of indicative rates of what you can get savings-wise in the bank at the moment. If you want to take out a cash ISA, which of course is a tax-free bank account, well, you can get 2.2, 2.3%, maybe a little more if you lock it up for a period of time. If you're prepared to lock up your money for a 1-year bond, not in an ISA now, well, you might be able to get 2% currently as I record this, which is March the 11th, 2013. Now, if you're prepared to lock your money up for a bit longer, say 3 years, then the best rate currently on the market is 3.5%. But that's with a bank that I guarantee you've never heard of and with no protection under the compensation scheme. So you should avoid those, really. And if you want a bank you have heard of and that you do get the protection of the compensation scheme, you're only going to get 2.55% for locking your money up for 3 years. Now, the problem with that is that inflation currently, at least as measured by CPI, the Consumer Prices Index, is at 2.7%. So if you're getting 2.5% in an account for 3 years, which of course you're not, because you've got to take 20% off that if you're a taxpayer, then if you've got 2% return, net return, and 2.7% inflation, you're actually going backwards. The value of your money is being eroded every year. You're not getting any benefit from the interest. And the maths works out that if you are a basic rate taxpayer, you need a bank account with an interest rate of 3.4% in order to beat inflation once your tax is taken off. But you just won't get that anywhere in the market at the moment. And it seems to have got a lot worse quite recently. And I wanted to look at why that is the case. I think a big reason for it is something called the Funding for Lending scheme. Now, this is a government Bank of England initiative designed to get the banks lending to businesses and to individuals. But that's having a real knock-on on savers. And to explain how, I'm going to just nip to a little illustration and apologise in advance for my awful artwork.
Okay, here are the three people who make the banking system work. Over here on the left, we've got a saver. Now, he has some money that he wants to deposit with the bank. And he wants to get a rate of return on that. And so the bank, for the privilege of looking after his money, will give him some interest. Let's just call it 3%. Nothing too spectacular, particularly not at the moment. So the bank will pay him that interest. Now, over here on the right, we've got some borrowers. Now, I don't mean the little people that live behind the skirting board, but these are people who want to borrow some money to buy a car. And so what the bank does is it takes this money deposited by the saver, that was a rubbish circle, wasn't it? And it lends it to the borrowers over here. And it charges the borrowers interest for borrowing that money. Let's just say it's at 7%. Oops. And now, the difference, of course, is the bank's profit. Oops, I'm having a little bit of difficulty with my tablet this evening for some reason, which is a bit frustrating. So the bank's profit in this case is the difference between those two numbers, the difference between the 7% it's charging the borrowers and the 3% that it's paying the saver. Now, of course, 4% is the headline. It's got branches to heat and light, it's got staff to pay, and of course there's an unfeasibly large bonus to be paid to the chief executive. But the problem is, and the reason why interest rates are so low at the moment, is because we have now the Bank of England and their Funding for Lending scheme. Now, what the Funding for Lending scheme does is it's offering money to lend money to the banks, a lot of money, at incredibly cheap interest rates. Actually, those rates start at 0.25%. So now what happens is that the bank in the middle here borrows from the Bank of England cheap money at just 0.25%, lends it out to the borrowers at 7%, and now instead of making 4% profit on the turn, what they're doing now, of course, is making the difference between the 7% and the 0.25, which is 6.75% profit. And because they can now make such easy profits on the back of this money from the Funding for Lending scheme, they no longer have to offer anything like interesting rates to the savers. They just don't need his money anymore in order to have that money to lend out to the borrowers. So the Funding for Lending scheme has, in no small measure, contributed a great deal to the reduction in interest rates recently.
So I hope that was helpful, but it's grim news for savers. There's not a lot of good news out there at the moment. There's not a lot of outlook that interest rates are going to get any better anytime soon. I don't know that, of course. So are there any alternatives, any different ways of getting an income other than putting the money in the bank? Well, yes, there are. And I'm going to explain those next time. So please leave any questions under the video here if you have them. I'll do my best to answer them. But for now, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.